Testing, testing. Assalamu alaikum. Does that sound good? All right. Just give it a go. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi sahbihin ajma'in. Ma'bad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everyone. Welcome to Iona. Welcome to our 14th annual Islam conference, Spirituality and Emotional Wellbeing. Depression, anxiety, and stress, among other factors that are common among youth and adults of all races and backgrounds, have in one way or another contributed to our mental health and well-being. Studies have shown that since the emergence of social media and the advent of COVID, more people have developed negative emotions that contribute to or worsen depression symptoms. Emotional, psychological, and social well-being are important to maintaining a good and wholesome life. Can spirituality play a role in one's life? If so, how can it help us to develop inner strength, peace, hope, and optimism? Tonight, you're going to join us with our esteemed speakers as they discuss the spirituality and emotional well-being, inshallah. So we have 3 speakers tonight, and we're going to get right into it. So we have, very blessed to have for the first time, our first speaker, Sister Camila Rashad. She works currently for ICNA Relief. And Sister Kamilah graduated from Wayne State University with a BSW and an MSW, and currently holds an LMSW as a clinical social worker. She has a background in with working with children and families who have experienced trauma. Sister Kamilah aims to advocate for those who are unable to advocate for themselves and hopes to offer a safe space for everyone in the community. She continues to provide emotional support and help to improve the quality of life for the Muslim community, for all of us, inshallah. So I'm going to hand the mic over and we'll get started right away. Sister Kamilah. Whatever you like, sister.
Put it anywhere? Oh, okay. Assalamu alaikum. I want to first apologize for being late. One of the things that I'm coming here not just as a professional, but as a mother who has a son who's diagnosed with a mental illness. So I've been basically really on the ups these last 30 days. Because in the last 30 days, my son has been hospitalized 3 times. I have been in and out of the hospital with my son 3 times in the last 30 days. One of the things that the brother so eloquently put, he mentioned about mental health. Mental health includes our emotions, our psychological, and our social well-being. The absence of that mental health is mental illness. Mental illness is when we have a deficit in how we relate to one another, how we think, and how we make choices, and even how we feel. Since the pandemic, one of the what we found out is that there's been an increase in depression. There's been an increase in general anxiety disorder. There's been an increase in schizophrenia. There's been an increase in drug use among everybody. Mental illness is not prejudice, it affects everyone. So I'm here not just as a professional, but as someone in support, because just a show of hands, if you want to, it's your choice. How many have a family member that has been affected by mental illness, that's with a diagnosis or not with a diagnosis, or that you know somebody? Because according to statistics, it's actually 1 in 10 families. This was about 20 years ago. And it had, I guess, said for the future, it's going to be 1 in 5 families that's going to be affected by mental illness. We're trying to take, I'm a mental illness advocate for the simple fact that we're trying to take the stigma away from it. One of the things that wasn't said about me is that I also not only work with Muslim Family Services in ICNA, but I work in a psychiatric hospital. right over here. I work in this hospital right here, and I work in the sister hospital right in Detroit. And what I see coming through there, there's no types of people that mental illness does not affect. It affects everybody. It doesn't matter their social status. It doesn't matter their race. It doesn't matter their nationality. It doesn't matter their religion. Mental illness affects everybody. And we as Muslims have to stop pushing it under the rug like it's not happening. Some of the factors that will have an impact for mental illness would be basically biological factors. That's basically brain chemistry or genes. Then we have some factors that's considered experiences like trauma and abuse. Trauma is personal. Trauma can impact anybody that they feel is traumatic. Trauma is not just abuse, physical abuse, but it also can be emotional abuse, mental abuse, and neglect. And also, we have hereditary. If there's mental illness in the family, that can also be a part of the mental illness also. So if we have any type of mental illness in my family, like I said, my son is affected by it because he's diagnosed with bipolar with psychosis. And what that looks like is that he might be in a state, we call it manic mania, where he might be on a 10. He's able to do a whole lot of things. And then he's also becomes delusional. Delusional means when he comes into the hospital, some of the things that we do as Muslims, or some people that do might be Christians, some of the things that we diagnose or say what's going on, some of those symptoms, we say religiously preoccupied. For Muslims, it comes to the point that we want to pray all the time. We want to dhikr all the time. We want to praise Allah all the time. Every time we come to somebody, we want to talk to Allah. These are some of the things that might go on for someone who's manic and as religiously preoccupied. For us women, we go through depression. Depression, not just depression, but some hopeless and helpless, and we're in a state of not being able to make some decisions for ourselves and not even know it. Sometimes we get overwhelmed and don't know that we're overwhelmed, and we start feeling differently. Some of the people that I work with talk about not being able to have any type of feeling. They call it numb. They're not able to feel happy. They're not able to feel sad. They're not able to feel excited. They're numb. They're numb to everything. They lost interest in things. So some of those symptoms could be not eating, not getting enough sleep, getting too much sleep, or eating too much. These are some of the things that can go on for when we're having depression, the general anxiety disorder, being around people. So when we talk about mental wellness, mental health, like the brother said, we're talking about the social well-being. That's being able to interact with people. Sometimes when we want to isolate, we're by ourselves, we'll start thinking things, and those thoughts might be negative thoughts. We start thinking things that's going to cause us problems when we interact with someone. If we have these negative thoughts, our actions are going to be indicative to those thoughts and those feelings. So one of my purposes of being here is not to just give out information, but to share information and and be a part of a support system for all of us as Muslims, because we need each other. It's really serious in our community as far as keeping it under the rug. Too many people come through these hospitals that are Muslims, and they think they have nowhere else to turn because they're coming here. Going into the hospital is fine. Sometimes we need medication, not all the time. Some of the gems I just want everybody to leave with is that remembrance of Allah works. Remembering Allah when we need to, when we're feeling down, we're feeling stressed, we're feeling out. Prayer, talking to someone, socializing is a part of a coping strategy. Having a trusted person you can talk to. It might not be a counselor. It can be a friend, a family member, but somebody to talk to. Because if we keep things inside of us and we keep it all bottled up, what do you think might happen? We're not letting anything out. What might happen? Come on, kiddos. What happens if we keep things inside of us? It explodes. Yeah. It's going to come out in some shape, form, or fashion. When my son was going through what he was going through, I'm a mother of 10, so this is one of my children, and one of my sons said, I feel embarrassed. And I said, don't feel embarrassed. I said, don't feel embarrassed, because when this was happening, This happened around the Markeyes in Highland Park. And it was Friday night. If anybody know anything about Friday night programs, there's a lot of Muslims around. You know, he's Muslim. He's brought up in the community. Everybody knows him. And I said, don't feel embarrassed, because out of all those brothers that came out to help us, I'm pretty sure somebody in their family has a mental illness. That's how serious this is. That's how I'm confident in knowing that. Because if I did not do the things that I do and work the places that I've been working, I would not believe that. I would not believe that. They have this thing called an IQ test. You heard of the IQ, that's intelligence, right? So now they have one out that's been out for a while, EQ. That's emotional, to see how you are emotionally intelligent. And so that's basically balancing how we interact with people, how we interact and how we handle stress, how we make choices. This is very important for us as human beings to be able to support each other and be able to understand when something is going on with us, that we know we can go get some help, because help is out there. Anybody have any questions for me? You want me to continue? I have more of these. I have time? Okay, because okay. Okay, I didn't want to, I didn't know I had enough time, but I wanted to share that. And also I want to share, as far as women, as far as us as women, sometimes we tend to do things that we think, we don't do things that we think we can't do. So a lot of times we have to embrace our vulnerabilities and talk about it. I was thinking about, I always tell people, I've been to the mountaintop. Right after 9/11, I worked a lot of places. I'm old, okay? I'll let everybody know this, I'm old. And I worked a lot of places, and I used to work at a community center. And at this community center, we had a grant to take inner city youth hiking in Yosemite. So the director of the program is a Christian lady, and this was right after 9/11. I like to share this story. This was right after 9/11, and this was the first time that people were being searched, getting on the planes, you know, going through the winds and everything like that. Well, myself and my number one son, he was 14 at the time, he was able to come because we had teenagers with us, and the person who was the director, a Christian lady, she wasn't going up the mountain. I was going to be the one to go up the mountain with the young people. So we had like 3 teenage boys and about 3 teenage girls that's going to climb up these mountains in Yosemite. Well, we were going to fly to California, and this is right after 9/11. So when we get to the airport, believe it or not, they told everybody to stay to the side. They put me and my son on the side. Now I'm looking like I look, and he had this little topian camise, whatever. They put us to the side. They actually searched all of the children and the lady, Miss Sims at the time. They searched her and they searched them, and they told me and my son to go through. So she joked about it. She said, well, Miss Rashad, maybe they think y'all slipped us something because they didn't search us going up the back. So when we finally get to California, and we're climbing up these mountains. At the time, the mountains wasn't as high as the first group who went before us, but we had to go through a terrain that was not cleared. So I'm making dua to Allah to get me through this, because I never climbed a mountain. I never been on the terrain. And I definitely didn't think, and this was in the summer, because it's the summer right after 9/11, so it's really hot. And I'm making dua to Allah to get me up there. So once I got up to this mountain, I decided, I said, I'm going to let people know I've made it to the mountaintop. So I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to advocate for us as women, as Muslims, how we can do things when we put our mind to it and ask Allah for guidance. And that's the same thing when we get into that hopelessness and helplessness. Asking Allah. It's not as easy as it's said, because it takes work and it takes practice. Does that make a little sense? Did you want to ask me something? You can ask me. It depends on the illness. It depends on the illness as far as the medication is concerned. The question is, what percentage of people are medicated? And it depends on the illness, because some people take medication to help them sleep. And some of the medications that they're taking are some same medications that people take when they are in a state of I guess, hopelessness or helplessness. So the medication depends on the illness. A lot of times when people that take medication, if they're depressed, they're taking an antidepressant if they need it, if they need it. But I don't know the percentage as of, as far as Muslims are concerned. A lot of times when people come into the hospital, if it's their first time coming to the hospital, they don't want medication. However, if you come into an inpatient psychiatric hospital, you will be medicated. You will be put on psychotropic drugs if you never had them in your life. And the only way you cannot be put on it if you go through a court case to fight it, because you're coming from the emergency room into inpatient. Now, once you leave the hospital, it's a person's choice whether or not they want to continue on with their outpatient medication. Mental illness is just like any other illness. It's like diabetes. It's like cancer. It's anything. It's something that can be managed. It's not the end of anything. It can be managed, and people can lead a fulfilling life. One of the things that I do at the psychiatric hospital, we run groups, and we try to normalize mental illness, because there's such a stigma attached to it that people are so embarrassed about it that they won't get help. There's a lot of people that won't seek help that need it. It's no embarrassment for having someone to talk to. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a counselor. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It can be anyone that you feel safe to talk to. Anybody, brothers, you have something, sir? Yes. Wa alaikum salam. I am, well, depend, those titles depend on the job I do. So when I worked at the guidance center, I was considered a psychotherapist, right? When I worked at the children's hospital, I was considered, what was I considered? I was considered a psychotherapist. At the Muslim center, they consider me a counselor. But my title, I'm a licensed therapist, clinical social worker who can do therapy. I can diagnose, but I don't do medication. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm with the Muslim Family Services in Detroit. We were under ICNA. I do not have a card, but feel free to call the office, okay? ICNA Muslim Family Services, and there's somebody there. Mm-hmm.
We'll get it from Sheikh Ali.
So what I'm finding out, it depends on what the person, we meet the patients where they are, the clients where they are, right? So what I'm finding out and working at Muslim Family Services, I've learned a lot about the different cultures. In my journey as a therapist, I've worked with different types of people. So our first goal is to build rapport. So we try to build rapport. If the rapport is not there and if there's another counselor available, we will find a counselor for you. Because it's not about the counselor, it's about you. So whatever makes you comfortable. Does that make a little sense? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. It would not be a factor with me because I've worked with different cultures. So I kind of know about the different cultures. And coming from, we as Muslims, we try to wean out the things that's going to cause us problems. So a lot of times, and this goes for all of us as Muslims, how our parents treated us, how they raised us is different than how our children can be raised today, because it's different times. So we still have those same moral principles. However, it's how we apply them. Does that make a little sense? So I understand what you're talking about, because there are a lot of cultures, and one of the things that we have that people talk to me about is how parents want their children to do or act a certain kind of way, and the children are not in line with it. So it causes the parents stress and it causes the children stress also. So what's going on today, there's a lot of young people that are depressed. They're sad because they feel as though they can't please their parents. So if a child feels like they can't please their parent, they feel guilt and shame. And so now they start to isolate and that they're not happy, they don't want to do anything. So when a dad sees his daughter or son looking like that, they're at, what's wrong with you? You know, why don't you go out and do this? Why don't, and they don't want to go outside. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to do anything but the the devices. You know, they just want to sit on do the devices and nothing else because they don't have anything else. They can't. They don't want to do it because the thinking is so different. Because if you were raised in Pakistan or Bangladesh or Saudi or anywhere like that, and your children are brought up here, there is going to be what we call a generation gap. Does everybody understand that? There's going to be a gap of understanding. So sometimes parents can regroup so they can feel okay. So my whole thing, and I always tell my patients and my clients, it's about your mental health, you being okay. If your child room is a mess and it stresses you out, what do you need to do to feel okay about this situation? Because they're going to do what they need to do, but how can you be okay so you won't get mentally ill because of something that somebody else does? Does everybody understand where I'm coming at with that? A lot of times the issues that we have is because of what someone else is doing, and we reflect it on ourselves. So the whole idea is reflect on ourselves. And this is what I'm learning through Islamic psychology on how we have to connect our heart and our head together in dealing with people. So we don't want to deal with people on a level that we want to be straight. You do this, you do that, haram, you know what I'm saying? And then we have some people that just be like, okay, do whatever you want to do. You know, it's okay. We want to have a balance. We want to be able to connect the heart and the head so our children feel safe, happy, and secure in being Muslim. Oh, I'm sorry. Because they're so young, you're able to shape them. And so what they need now is just a lot of love and support and feel secure, being able to come to you and talk to you and be happy. So they're just kids. So whatever they do, it's all on you. What they wear, what they eat, what they dress, you have control over all of that. And in doing that, the Islamic upbringing is on you to make that happy and fun for them as they grow into becoming mature adults. Does that make a little sense? Because you are here and you see them, and your thinking would be a little different from your parents if they weren't here. And so the question was, so somebody who was born here and has children want to know about relating to their children while they're here, because they were born here, but the parents wasn't. So the grandparents weren't born here, but you were, right? And so that has a lot to do with your interaction. So your parents are seeing that, and some things that you might do that they might think they might not approve of, but that's what you've gotten used to doing. What is you and your children? So you're building that relationship, and you're teaching your children to respect the parents. They might think differently, and they can still respect them and still be happy in it. Because one of the things that happens in our community a lot, and we don't know it, is the trauma. Because we don't know, like I said, trauma is personal. And sometimes when our children are forced to do things that they just don't understand, they just can't do, and they grow up with that mindset, it becomes traumatic for them. And trauma rewires the brain. So they will think differently because the brain is rewired. And when someone's brain is rewired, talking to them on a rational level might not work. Does that make a little sense? Like if somebody is in a state of irrationality, talking to them rationally will not help. So a lot of times we have to let people process what they're going through and come back to talk about it. And as I said, in my life, I am not perfect. Like I said, I'm a mother of 10. So we're talking about 10 different personalities. A lot of things go on in our religion because as our iman ebbs and flows, right? It's up and down. You know, one minute we doing all these wonderful things, the next minute we might not be. So in the process of being like that, being able to balance it out with our children, because they see everything. At Muslim Family Services, because it is a nonprofit organization, therapy sessions are free. The Muslim Family Services, ICNA takes donations, but the therapy services are free.
Can I have a question then pertaining to how many therapists are available currently at Muslim Family Services?
To my understanding, it might be 2 at this point. Sheikh Ali also works with people, myself, and sometimes Sister Tahira, and we're in the process of getting interns also. But Sheikh Ali, he's really good in working with people. One of the things that I've done, and like I said, I've done a lot. So I've worked with people in recovery. I worked in residential with women who were recovering from drugs. I was a children's mental health professional for 7 years. I also worked with men coming home from prison after being in prison for many years. I did it as an internship, and I also worked with Dream of Detroit in that area also. So I have a lot of different things that I've done and a lot of things that I've trained in doing. I'm not perfect. I'm not the best at what I do because, I'm honored and humbled to be sitting here sharing this information. But my goal, like I said, when I started many, many moons ago, was to advocate for us as Muslims to let it be known that we, as part of this fabric of America that we live in, that the same thing that goes on outside of our Islamic life is happening around us. A long time ago, a sheikh said, if you want to know what's going on in the Muslim community, look at the non-Muslims. And this is where we are today. We look at them, and it's us too. You know, he said it's going to come a time where people are coming into this Islam, and they're not going to look like us. They're going to come in here with all kinds of sicknesses and illnesses, and we are there to embrace them. We're in a situation that our children are needing foster care, that our women are needing housing, our brothers are needing shelter, our brothers are needing someone to talk to, because it's you guys are the leaders of the household, and being able to lead in a way that is not tyrannical, but I guess altruistic, so to speak, a way that is benevolent, not tyrannical, and that takes a balance, and this is where we are today. We're at a time now that we all have to come together, all of us, because we are one, no matter where our cultures come from. I believe I'm not sure. He's a religious counselor. So the imams, he is a religious, so what he does mostly is marriage. He does a lot of marriage counseling. We do premarital and marriage counseling also. And he does the religious. So some people come in to see me and they don't want to have any type of religious counseling. They don't want me to tell them about prayer. They don't want me to tell them about dhikr. They don't want to hear about fasting. They want to know what I need to do right now, and I don't want to know none of that stuff. So I deal with some people like that, and then some people come and they say, what can I do? How can Allah help me? So I go to Sheikh Ali in that area, and I talk with him to see what we can do as far as our religion says for us to do, what's best for us. And Allah is most merciful, because I was just mentioning to someone today, sometimes people say, I have people feel guilt and shame because they can't make salat. They say, I just can't make salat. I just feel I can't do it. The law so mercifully says you can't stand up, sit down. You can't sit down, lay down. It's the way we can get around it, right? So it's like Allah's just so merciful with everything. People say, I just can't do it. But it's not what we do that's going to get us into paradise. From my understanding, it's not what people can let me know this. It's not what we do, but it's Allah's mercy that will get us into paradise. It's not what we do, it's Allah's mercy.
We do too, but it's by Allah's mercy.
It's by Allah's mercy. Okay, thanks for clearing that, because you guys are more knowledgeable than me, so you would know.
Definitely. Yeah, no doubt.
without Allah's mercy, nobody's going to go to heaven, including the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As he said, you know the hadith. He
Okay.
said,
So I have these esteemed brothers up here, and you know, I didn't even know this doctor was sitting over here across from me listening to me. Did I say anything off that I shouldn't have said, sir? Everything was okay. Like I said, yes, ma'am. Children as what? The sessions are confidential, and it depends on the age of the child, but our sessions are confidential. And when the parent comes in and signs the child up for services, the parent is told that, and the only time that confidentiality will be broken if the child wants to hurt themselves or hurt somebody else, then confidentiality would be broken. Other than that, if the child says, if they say something that I think the parent should know about, and I say, hey, would it be okay if I talk to your parent about that? And most of the time they'll say, I don't care, sure. So basically it's confidential unless the yeah, it is. Yes, it is. If a child is coming because of something that's going on at home, then we talk about family sessions. If the parent is involved in whatever the child is going through, I do family sessions. I have a couple of families that come in because of what's going on at home. And it's not always on the parent. It's not always the parent's part or anything like that. Because sometimes, like I said, trauma is personal, and sometimes we don't even know that our children might be traumatized by an experience that can be something as little as being yelled at 3 years ago that's stuck in their head. It could be anything because it's so personal that we don't know whatever it is, if it's trauma. Thank you, and I'm sorry if I went over. Thanks a lot. Please forgive me if I said
Jazakallah khair, sister. No, you're wonderful. Very beneficial talk, inshallah. So our next speaker, a good friend of mine, Dr. Halim Naeem, he is a leader in the mental health movement. Dr. Naeem he has sat on multiple boards of organizations ranging from civic engagement, educational, religious, and professional mental health. He is published in magazines, books, articles, and he speaks at numerous conferences and conventions on spiritual, psychological, and masculinity issues. He has also developed the first Islamically rooted masculine development model. It is the Love and Mercy model, and published 2016, I believe. He's also the co-host of the hit show Good Vibes with Good Brothers, which you can find that usually as segments on YouTube. And it's a podcast, right? Okay, inshallah. So without any further delay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Naeem.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam taslima. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad al-Fatih lima ughliq wa khatim lima sabaq. ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم. Allah send prayers and blessings on the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Number one, I want to thank the Imam, thank the community for having us over here. I want to say Jazakallah khair and for the continued help and support. Imam Elturk has been one of the staunchest supporters many years ago when we started this little Muslim mental health crusade, right? Try and bring things into the mental health community right after I got my doctorate about 10 years ago. And you know, we were doing Muslim mental health conferences years beforehand, but he was the head of the Imam's Council for a number of years and has always been extremely supportive of mental health issues. Our good brother over there, William Toon, Has always anything that we needed to happen, and the mental health conferences, getting the word out, putting flyers on cars, everything like that. Alhamdulillah, we have some big supporters over here who have helped tremendously in changing the culture of how imams and how communities even attach to mental health. So I want to thank, and I don't just, you know, I usually always cost a lot of money to colleges and things like that, but I made it very clear to Imam, said a long time ago, whenever you need me, you know, to come and do and say something, I'm there, and I hope I've been living up to my word since then. So, so that's why we're here. So I want to thank all of you for even being these percentage and the small percentage of people who are not just talking about or engaging and flipping through social media and Facebook and different things and seeing mental health issues, but you felt important enough to come in person to something like this, to a talk like this. And it's needed. We're still coming back from, you know, isolation, and, you know, still have masks in a number of areas in life and things like that, but you're still seeing it as important enough to come and learn and talk about this topic, inshallah. All right? So, again, thank you. Jazakallah khair. Hope everybody's doing well. How do I say it? Afne Balani? Or Balan? Ah, you didn't know I say that, see? You know, yeah, he's laughing. He didn't know. Y'all don't know what I can do. So now you don't know what I can hear when you guys are talking to. All right, anyway. Let's get into it. I'm going to take a different angle. Number one, Sister Kamilah was awesome. I loved it. I see a lot of people try to talk about mental health and things like that, and it's sometimes it's kind of blah and give information, but alhamdulillah, very, very awesome, very engaged, and I thank her for continued support. I'm a father, just had a fourth baby. It's 4, but yeah, 10, I don't know. I want 7, because 7 is my favorite number, but yeah, 10, I'm probably going to have a mental health issue myself if I don't have one already. So, so we're going to keep it at 7. All right. Inshallah. Make dua for me. I knew I wanted to, I'm taking a different angle. I'm going to do a little more forest in terms of trees, meaning the community-wise, a little macro type of thing, but I do want to say why I do this, and I want to give a couple droplets of trends that we need to really pay attention to. Things that are coming up. It's that, you know how you see the clouds coming from the west, and I mean, it's still sunny over here, but you know it's going to rain in like 3 or 4 hours, because that's just what happens. The clouds move a certain way and it rains. So I'm one of those people that see the clouds some miles away before forecast comes out and you start getting your umbrellas and jackets and things like that. This is the thing. I wanted to do this since I knew I wanted to do this since I was 13 years old. I was in 8th grade. I knew I wanted to be a psychologist, and alhamdulillah, I am a psychologist. And I'm going to say and push and advocate. Number one, that's a doctor. That's a doctor too, okay? And some people say, "Oh, that's not a real doctor. PhD stands for poor hungry doctor." No, okay. Well, let me tell. No, hold on. I know what you're thinking. Let me tell you something. PhDs create knowledge. Okay, we create knowledge. We have to make new research. I did the first research on Black American Muslims in the discipline of psychology. All right, so they have never cared to study even Muslim people, but black Sunni Muslim people never cared to study that. We had to do things like that. So that's looking at and creating new things, and then people to this day, many years later, are going off of that. We need to have, number one, some of your children need to become mental health professionals, okay? It also pays pretty well too when you know what you're doing. Okay, so don't. I don't know what the thought is about that, and you owe less than med school, quite honestly. So you'll end up being anyway, whatever. But my point is, regardless of that, our community needs a whole lot more, because the brother here, you asked a question, right? Isn't it a factor to have ethnicity? Isn't it a factor to have some cultural understanding and background and everything like that, right? So if we're asking that, then how else are we going to provide that for our community than it coming from our own, right? So there has to be a real thought about, this has to be part of a thing this has to be part of the pool of disciplines that we actually glorify and esteem. Because classically, the only thing that people go ooh and ah over is becoming a medical doctor. Well, guess what? Guess who sits on my couches when the medical doctors are sad and can't take their families? Do they go to other medical physicians? No, they come to me. Okay? So the thing is, we're a community. We're a community. And our community, if we're going to be able to culturally sustain ourselves, then we have to invest some of our kids to be like, you know what? You seem really good with people. Have you ever thought of doing this and this and this? So that's the thing. Another trend. I got kids around here. How do I say it in a nice way? How men and women and boys and gender and identity are being pushed in this country. We're in a month, I think it's called Pride. Oh, it's Pride. Pride in what, Imam? Pride in what? Oh, you don't know? Oh, okay. All right. Well, so you have to be very isolated and cut off to know that there is an attack on Islamic masculinity and Islamic femininity and just Islam. There's an attack on family. There's an attack on marriage, on values of men and women coming together. It's an attack. It's a conscious, consistent, incessant thing that no, you have to do this. It's an attack to tell little boys and little girls to wear different things, to not identify themselves the way that Allah has identified them. Okay? That's clear. And again, not even just people who grew up in another culture, but even sister talking about first generation people. Don't think that because even though you are born here, okay, you were still raised by people who weren't born here, and it's way more in the water for kids. That gap between first generation and what's normal to you, because your parents were still at some level trying to do this. And then there's sometimes a dichotomy, or you want to get out the shelter, what have you. What is normal and what's going to be normal to these kids, you can't imagine. You can't even imagine it. What is going to be normal to these two walking here that you think you can? No, you don't understand. I have been to, I don't know how many continents, everything except Antarctica. But I've been to Muslim countries, different Muslim countries. One in the Middle East. Where's Doha? Is that in Qatar? Doha? Yeah, in Qatar, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in West Africa, Muslims in Europe. I have never seen anything like the way that America pushes that and sexuality. I've just never seen a country just push the primal desire of these things. I haven't seen anything like it. I haven't. It's just like, wow. So I think sometimes we estimate, or we're like, oh yeah, I went through that. No, you didn't. I don't even know. I tried. I talked to kids, right? I'm like, wow, yeah, I don't even know what to say to you. Like, that's normal to you. I gotta actually sit down, do some thicker, ask Allah, like, man, what would the Prophet do? I really, wow. So if we think we have it figured out and everything, and very quickly, a young person, all right, very quickly, your kids are gonna see, do you get it or do you not? Real quick. And just in how you answer, the conversation, certain things and it's like, okay, be respectful. Nod their head, tell you, yeah, but you might as well be in West Bloomfield right now. Hong Kong, Beijing, Guadalajara, wherever. Okay? And so this is what's, so the way that our kids are being groomed to be promiscuous, I've indoctrinated into programmed into this type of thing. Wow. You haven't seen anything like it. You think you have, but you haven't. Because it's a lot of things normal to them. You're waving? Yes. So no, see that's a natural thing. Go ahead, I'm sorry, sis. So the thing is, if they have to go outside in the rain, okay? If they gotta go outside in the rain, you equip them with things to not get wet. Okay? See, the issue is that people think that not telling, isolation. If I tell them about intercourse in Islam, which actually is very against our prophetic tradition. The Prophet was actually very open about the proper way to men and women should please each other. So this like shaming culture, I mean, there's a tact and a tastefulness to it, but this complete shaming of that type of thing, that's in culture. That has nothing to do with religion. There's lots of hadiths I read growing up. Prophet being very explicit about this is how you do this is da 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 da. Don't fall on your wife like a beast. Da, 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 da. I mean, it was just clear in there. The thing that we're not doing is taking the time. You want to know, taking the time to give them proper judgment about what things are and why they're coming a certain way. When they watch the movie Frozen, for example, and there is nothing but pantheistic, paganistic shirt throughout the whole movie, but it's packaged in such a way. But if I'm sitting and talking to my son Issa over there, like, this is where this and this and this belief goes into play, and this comes from here, and this is why they're talking to the water this way, and trying to, then you give them something to process with and make judgments for and against, because then you're proving, and not even just proving, but you're showing this is why you have the best way of life. This is where this is coming from. This is why they're saying things this way. But if that's their only frame of reference, then what else do you want a human being to do? In court, when people are making the cases, when the lawyers are making the cases, the lawyer usually wants to go first. They fight to be first. Why? Because that's the first initial story that you get presented to you. The second story coming in still has to fit in with what you've initially been presented with. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you're not giving your children any platform, any understanding, anything, and nonetheless, and we haven't talked about when they struggle with something, when they like a boy at school, when they start having feelings for someone. If they don't feel like they can come and talk to you about some of those struggles, then you already lost the game. And it's going to be real hard to come at me 20 years later when they're 16, 17, 18, 19, and you're wondering why your child doesn't know if she likes a boy or a girl. And you need it to be fixed in 2 or 3 weeks before they get sent off to college because you don't know what's going to happen in the dorm rooms over there. So it starts now. It starts at this point. You had a question? Well, this is the importance of Muslim community. And I'm going to tell you something. There's a group. Yeah, go ahead. Yes. She's basically saying there's a lot of gaps and a lot of different things going on, and there's this balance. There's this back and forth that has to go from being politically correct to America, and also being Islamically correct. And how do you balance and play that type of thing? I'm gonna tell you something. And alhamdulillah, a community and Imam Elturk knew what they were doing. You got people, I'm going to tell you something. You got people here who have lasted through all of this American political slavery, all this PC stuff. And this is the importance of Muslim community. You have a Black American Muslim community that knows how to be American Muslim, okay? And keep the values that we need to keep. Because the thing, my mindset is, I don't care about politically correct because I made and built this country just as much as Biden, Trump, any of these other people. So I have the right. I have built the right. Our ancestors have put these civil rights that we use to even fight and say certain things right now. Okay, we have just as much ownership in this country as tax-paying citizens, as people with history, to be able to take the stances that we would want to take to preserve our community. You don't see the Jews down the street, oh, how do we do this? And oh no, Friday night, they have their values and they keep it very close to the chest. Certain Asian communities, they're not, oh, how do we? No. It's people who have been colonized or people who have been dominated by white Eurocentric people who kind of feel this, oh, I need to make this type of thing right. And it's fine and it's normal. I'm not knocking, but the thing is, it's a paradigm shift that, no, this is American too. Wanting Muslim families is American. That's American. Boys liking girls and girls liking boys, that's American. Loving Allah and the Prophet, that's American. It's part of our culture. It's in the songs and the clothes and everything. You got people wearing beads now for fashion, right? It used to be like astaghfirullah and everything. Now people are wearing it to be cool. I mean, it's a paradigm shift. So that's the thing. Okay, got a few more minutes left. Yes. Be blunt. For sure, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got it. Mm-hmm.
I haven't really seen like what you're talking about, where people are forcing like our kids to like be gay or something.
Oh, it's out there. Just look at Netflix. Look at Disney. Look. Nike's got. Oh, go ahead.
Can you count on your fingers the amount of like gay Muslims you know versus the amount of like Muslims who have been traumatized and because of things like extreme generals that stem from things like that we are affected by, where you have
Mm-hmm.
men and women taking like legitimate Islamic scripture and then taking it to being so extreme because nobody's sitting down and being like, hey, even though this text says yada yada yada, right?
Exactly.
You can't take it and be so extreme. You have to be like with like kindness. You have to be like this. So
Exactly.
I'm coming here. I want to hear about the abuse, the trauma that is in our community because yeah, we're not talking about mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody's talking about it. And if you ask me, and if you ask my generation,
Mm-hmm.
that is a real source that is in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't even count on like, I can't even like take, I don't even know anybody in like from my friends that I've met here that don't have some type of trauma from abuse.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that
Let me.
doesn't have that. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't know like.
So here's the thing. So I was going through a few different. That was one. Okay. But you're asking. The question was trauma versus how many people are impacted by homosexuality. Transgender and things like that. If you. And yeah, how trauma and abuse. Okay. You must not have my social media. I've been talking about abuse for years, but they're both huge problems. Certain things you may not. I just covered that one. I haven't gotten into trauma yet because that's the one that fires me up the most. We PTA. So anywho, that's the stuff about one trend that's hitting our community. What is in our community just as much, and I would say even more deeply, is the culturally abusive brand of Islam. Okay, and it's a so-called Islam. So when you're, I'm sorry. I'm talking emotional trauma. I'm talking physical trauma. I'm talking sexual trauma. Okay, I'm talking all of them, and I'm saying not just directly, but vicariously. All right, the one that is so normal, that most of our children get raised in, and to me, I'm the only person, imam, psychologist, mental health, what have you. I say that screaming and arguing in front of your children should be a deal breaker. If a person cannot persist, I'm not talking about something happened and we had a tiff or we had an argument. But people whose pattern for a number of years is to traumatize and normalize two people that you actually love, screaming and yelling in front of your children, that's a deal breaker. I will tell you with everything, I get divorced if you have no way to try and resolve this. This is monstrous. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've counseled it. I've consoled it. Like that being normal, and they'll get over it, is satanic. It is really like wow. Okay. So no, abuse has been talked about for a number of things. And it needs to be talked about a whole lot more because I will say to you, abuse is not Islam. So if we're saying that a lot of the young men and young women that are coming out and they're coming out of abuse from these Muslim guys that practice a certain way or what have you, I would tell you, yes, people claim that they're Muslim, but those actions, those behaviors, and you may want to know, what is abuse? What constitutes to abuse? What is abuse? Abuse is to go above and beyond to go to harm disproportionately, without reason, without rationale, for the method, for the intensity. The point is to harm, to break, to dysfunctionally control a person in a very destructive way. So this can be done emotionally, by how you raise voices, names, passive-aggressive things. This is done physically. This is done sexually. Okay? And this is rampant in our community. Rampant. And people justify it how they think they are to justify it. But I am telling you, we have been saying this, Imam has been saying, there is no place in Islam for this type of behavior. This is not Islam. So I don't care if it's a sheikh that told you. I don't care if someone went fatwa shopping. I don't care if you know it's a grandpa and uncle for umpteen years who's been doing this, and that's how you've managed and controlled your family for 30 and 40 years. Well, people can be fools for 30 and 40 years. This is I'm almost done. This is unacceptable. Okay? Last thing before we turn it over is the most deadly force, and again, we keep saying this, the most deadly force and what kills in our community is stigma. Stigma has literally killed, had people teens commit suicide because they couldn't talk to anybody. I've seen kids walk past their families, not give a text to any friend, to anybody, and then take their own life. The depression didn't kill. Heck, the suicide ideation didn't kill. It's the stigma that takes the hope away from any understanding, any acceptance, any recovery, and leaves you to nothing else but your pain and shaitan and your nafs or what have you, having a very dysfunctional conversation that usually ends in your life being gone. It's stigma. And this is what we fight. And it can come in a lot of different forms, but that's for another time. So these are some of the things. We could, keep going, but I want to give the time. These are some of the things to look out for. These are some of the things of how we're shifting culture here, conversations to have, things to have with our children, ways to rethink how we're treating our families, how we're treating our wives, our spouses. And there's a lot of big problems happening. So with that, Jazakallah khair, and thank you.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Naeem. A lot to think about, a lot to talk about.
Question, go ahead.
I couldn't hear you. What'd you say?
How would you help them? How would you help that family?
Well, there's a lot of different types of, every family is going to be different. The question is, how do you help a very dysfunctional family? Well, dysfunction is nearly infinite. You could have abuse and trauma here. You could have this person controlling this person there, things back and forth. You got external in-laws, and I mean, it's a lot. But the first thing first is the people have to say there's a problem going on, and enough important people in the family have to want there to be a change, and then they really just have to do what the counselor says. And that's the hard part. The hardest part is actually wanting the change, because people actually deep down don't want to change. So that's the hardest part. And when they want to, it's too late. Somebody is in the hospital, somebody killed themselves, somebody's already divorced. I mean, it's usually too late with a lot of Muslim people by the time they actually want to. So,
well, inshallah, we'll expand on that, what to do now with our final speaker, the President, Imam, and Ameer of the Islamic Organization of North America, which is a nonviolent movement for social justice through Islam. So I'll hand it over then to our well-known final speaker, Imam Mustapha Elturk.
Thank you, William, and thank you, Sister Kamilah and Dr. Halim, for your insights, for coming and sharing the podium with me, addressing this very important subject, spiritual and emotional well-being. We all are born, pretty much, I would say 99% of us are born healthy, good babies. It's through the trials of life that we develop all of these, things we're talking about: anxiety, depression, mental health, mental illness, and so on and so forth. But before I go on with my piece on this, which is spirituality, and I'll show you how spirituality is going to help one in their lives, mentally, emotionally, physically, in every aspect. And this is what we need to focus on, particularly with our therapists. Obviously, they cannot shove it down the throat of Muslims. You heard Sister Kamilah say, they don't want to hear about salah or fasting or whatever. But before I do that, before I proceed with my discourse here, I want to, talk a little bit about what Dr. Halim is saying in response to the comment that was made earlier regarding the abuse and trauma and all that. The one thing that we imams sometimes get when we confront, husbands or fathers with physical abuse particularly, they say, well, it's in the Quran. I'm saying, what? Where is it in the Quran? And they quote the ayah, الرجال بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about if they don't, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ نُشُوزَهُنَّ, this is the part that they don't understand. If you fear them being obnoxious, then the first step is to فَعِظُوهُنَّ. You should, advise them, talk to them nicely. If they continue and persist, then فَهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ. Don't share the bed with them. And then if they continue, وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. Beat them. They use this ayah to justify what they've been doing, which it's totally wrong and absurd to use that ayah without having proper knowledge and understanding of this ayah. Okay, this ayah, first of all of the people that I have dealt with, the men that I have dealt with, and use this ayah as justification. Of course, I explained to them what this ayah really means. First of all, the wife or whoever has to have gone to the degree where she's a threat to the to the person, kind of like a policeman trying to get someone who is violent. You see, they have to apply force. But in all cases, almost all cases, the women are not violent. On the other hand, they are very passive, and they have been, taken the beating over time and are afraid. They have the stigma, you know what I'm saying, to go out and speak out to the imam or to a counselor or to whatever. So they have absolutely, I don't want to dwell on this, but they have absolutely wrong understanding of Islam, of the Quran, and all of these things are that are happening, whether it is physical, emotional, sexual abuse, is absolutely cultural and has no basis in the religion in Islam, nor in the practice Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All you need to do is read the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and see how he treated his women. Just see how he treated his women and his children. He had all girls. And then try to emulate him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمْ. Say, if you really love Allah, no Muslim will say, I don't love Allah, right? Everyone says, I love Allah. Then Allah said to the Prophet to say, then follow me, follow my way, follow my example. Allah will love you. I don't think Allah loves anyone who abuses his wife or children just because it's a tradition or just because for any reason. This got to stop. And by the way, the Imams have talked about it. The Imams and the Imams Council have proclamation, or not proclamation, what do you call it, resolution regarding domestic violence and all that. So we always talk about this. And we always address this. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. ثم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس قد جاءتكم موعظة من ربكم وشفاء لما في الصدور وهدى ورحمة للمؤمنين. قل بفضل الله وبرحمته فبذلك فليفرحوا هو خير مما يجمعون. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Okay, let me begin with the ayah first of all, and we'll get into the subject of the mental and emotional health and all that. What does this ayah say? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in addressing humanity, remember the Quran, Islam, came to all people, not only to us Muslims. And in addressing the entire humanity, he says, O mankind, O people, a maw'idah from your Lord has come to you. A good sermon, a Quran has come to you from your Lord. What is in it? وَشِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. In it is a healing to the diseases of the hearts. شِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. And rightfully so, as Sister Kamilah said, there has to be a connection between the heart and the mind. And just so you know, the seat of the intellect, the aql, that Allah talks about is the heart. Is the heart. So when Allah said this Quran is shifa, we have to believe him. It is a healing. Just as you go to a doctor, he gives you a medicine for your headache goes away. This Quran is there for all of your emotional, mental, every other issue or problem that you may encounter in this life. And as a conscious Muslim, as a conscious believer, I know that this life is full of trials. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did for Muslims too, not only non-Muslims, for everybody. As a matter of fact, the ayat from Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. He's talking specifically to the believers. Pay attention, O believers. Ista'inu bis-sabri was-salah. Seek help through patience and prayers. You need Allah, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The sister talked about how you ask help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the only healer. He's the only one we can turn to so he can intervene and help us. But if we are so distant from him, how is he going to come to our aid? إِلَّا مَنْ رَحْمَ رَبِّي, except those whom Allah has mercy upon. So Allah made it very clear, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. We shall definitely test you. Allah is talking to the believers. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. Skip one ayah and then that ayah comes. We shall surely test you with some fear and hunger and shortage of wealth and ailments, diseases, including mental health issues, and also thamarat, you know, having your businesses bankrupt and what have you. Thamarat meant at that time, because there were no industries at that time or businesses, it was all farming. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we will test you with all these things. And we have at a personal level have experienced some of these trials, no doubt. And definitely they can most certainly develop anxiety and depression if we are unable to deal with it. Allah said, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, and give good news to the patient ones. الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. When a calamity befalls upon them, they say, to Allah we belong, and to Him is our return. So mental and emotional health is crucial to having a stable and healthy life. But what is mental health? According to the mentalhealth.gov, which Sister Kamilah eloquently described, and I'll repeat so we can understand what mental health is. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from birth, literally, all the way up until you reach our age and older than that. From childhood and adolescence, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. And mental health problems affect us inwardly and also outwardly. They affect our mood, how we think and perceive things, our thinking, and also behavior, how we behave. So mental illness has physical, social, and also financial impacts. Now, here's what I would like to present so we can understand how we human beings were created and how it is so important to connect with the divine in order for the divine to intervene and help us go through those periods of anxiety, depression that may lead. And by the way, Sister Kamilah, I do have a son who's been diagnosed with bipolar and psychosis. He's 26 years old now, and he's been to Common Ground and twice, and I know what it's like. Yeah, I know what it's like. He had suicidal thoughts in the past, and then sometimes, like you said, his mood swing. Sometimes he's so great, and sometimes he's having so much negative thoughts that he needs immediate attention. So I know what it's like. But here's the thing: if we understand, in order to have a healthy physical, mental, emotional, and be well, we need to understand who we are, where we came from, and why we were created. I think if we understand that, then I think we will be able to battle and overcome whatever can come at you, because you would have put a shield in front of you, and that shield is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is going to protect you. Now, one thing, if I forget to mention, we need not forget the role of shaitan, Satan, that you mentioned earlier, Dr. Naeem, right? Because he plays a great role in taking people by his ploys and tricks in a way that he wants to make them miserable. Literally. That he vowed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, I'm going to attack them from the front, from the back, from the right, from the left, from every direction, and they will never be grateful to you. I will change them. I will do this and I will do that. Right? So who are we? Let us understand who we are. We are a composite of two entities, two very conscious beings, infused and put together, the body and the spirit, the soul, right? The spirit came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the body came from the crust of the earth. We were once present all in the form of the spirit before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah took a covenant from all of us. Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? We all said yes, bala, in Surah Al-A'raf. Yes, of course, you are our Lord, which means those spirits in which the Prophet described at that time, al-arwahu junudu mujannada. Those arwah, spirits, were before Allah like conscripted soldiers. You've seen parades of soldiers, you know? That's how we were before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we were very conscious when Allah asked us, who is your Lord? And we responded. We were conscious beings before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah put us to say cold storage, if you will, or sleep or minor death, and then created this whole universe for us to inhabit with the planet Earth, for us, which is the tiniest planet, by the way, to inhabit, and created our body. The first body that was created was Adam, and then Hawa, and then from both of them, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. O mankind, be mindful of your Lord, the one who created you from a single soul, and out of it created its mate, Adam and Hawa, and out of the two, بَثَّ رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. He produced many men and women, not genderless. The Quran is very, very emphatic about this. There's male and there's female. There's no third choice, period, the end. And out of the two, through procreation, humanity came. And when we come into this world, we know the hadith. What happens when the mother conceives? When the mother conceives after the stage of nutfa, alaqa and mudgha, 40, as some scholars say, after 120 days, Allah sends an angel, takes one of those spirits that are dormant, and blows into the womb of the mother. And now we have ثُمَّ أَنشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. And now we have created this being a different creation, right? So we are these two entities. And by the way, do you know why when a baby is born, the first thing we do is what, Dr. Naeem? First thing, you had 4, you want 7. Let me tell you, and you have 10, mashallah. When we had Muhammad, the first child, and then the second boy was Adam. So I told my wife, okay, so we have Muhammad, last prophet, Adam, first prophet. Let's work on the remaining prophets. She said, what? Get out of here. That's 23 others. So I wanted 23. But I'm happy in this day and age with what I have, believe me. And by the way, my son, Roy, from my previous marriage, has 4 kids. And wallahi, speaking about, today's world, I told my son, I said, listen, you grew up in a different era, generation gap. I grew up in a different time. And don't be surprised. I'm going to tell it to you right now, just like it is. Don't be surprised if one of your kids or one of your grandkids come to you and say, I'm gay or I am lesbian. Because the environment that they are growing on, no matter how you protect them, they're going to grow up on it. It's like normal. It's not a big deal. Whereas when we grew up, it was a big deal. And yes, wow. America and Canada, by the way. Canada is worse, as a matter of fact. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think Canada is even worse than America. So what do we do when the baby is born? The first thing we do when the baby is born is do what? Adhan, right? Why do we do the adhan? To awaken the spirit that had been dormant. Allahu Akbar. We want this spirit to wake up on Allahu Akbar and know that God, this is the God Allah had taken covenant from you, and you said that He is your Lord. Wallahu a'lam. This is just my own ijtihad, my own interpretation, but it makes sense. You know, we want the child to be raised on Islam, on knowing Allah, on knowing that to Him we belong and to Him is our return. So now, if we need to strike a balance between, you know, the body and the soul. If we leave, if we take away the spirit, then we are nothing but, I'm going to say it, I'm sorry, but that's what it is, animals. There's the animal side of us, and there's the angelic side of us. The animal side of us does not care about halal, haram, God, akhirah, jannah, nar. The animal side of us wants satisfaction. And I don't care by any way, I want my desires to be satisfied, halal or haram, it doesn't matter. And this society is presenting to our kids, particularly when it comes to sexuality. It's so unbelievable, you know. People, Muslims and non-Muslims alike, Muslims who are so far away from the deen, and non-Muslims are not getting married anymore. You heard of the term cohabitation? They prefer cohabitation than married. Why? Because men are getting what they want for free. They have no responsibility. They're not sharing. Now, when you distance yourself from the divine, I'm telling you, I am telling you, you are going to be depressed. You are going to have so much anxiety in your life that you will eventually have some mental illness, some mental issues, and not know why. You know, even some of the wealthiest of people have mental issues because they're so disconnected from the divine. And dunya is not going to give you, you know, the remedy for your depression and your anxieties. And that's why you find so many people committing suicide. They say, I don't know what else to do. So they take their life. But alhamdulillah, we know that Islam came to guide us to having good physical being as well as emotional and psychological and spiritually be fit. We need to strike a balance. And let's start, I talked about, you know, Adam and Hawa, right? The first couple. Now, what happened to Adam and Hawa? They were being trained in the garden. You know the story? They were being trained in the garden. Do not come near this tree. And that training was supposed to train Adam because he's going to be the Khalifa of Allah on earth. He's going to be in charge of this whole entire earth and universe for that matter. So he needed some training. And training on what? Training on obedience. Training on obeying the divine. You didn't create yourself. Allah created you. You don't belong to yourself. You belong to Allah. The body I have is not mine. Is not mine. If only our youth can understand this concept. So don't feed it, first of all, with haram means. Don't feed your children with haram means, because it will be polluted and corrupted. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Adam and Hawa this training in the garden. And in the garden, everything was permissible. Eat and drink to your heart's delight from whatever you see. Everything belongs to you. Enjoy the garden. وَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةِ. Do not come near this tree. That's the only forbiddance. That's it. Do not. But man, by his nature, wants to satisfy his desires. They desired the tree. So what happened? Again, don't discount the role of shaitan. It was shaitan who, who tricked them. So what did they do? They tasted the tree first. And then they ate from the tree. And they found themselves naked. And Allah came down, says, didn't I tell, well, came down, I don't mean physically, or we don't have a jasad to Allah. And he said, didn't I tell you not to come near this tree? They said, رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Our Lord, we have wronged ourselves. We have done injustice. If we accept that we sinned, we have disobeyed you, but we know that you are merciful. If you don't forgive us and be merciful to us, we will be doomed. We will be among the losers. Allah forgave them. That was the training for Adam and Hawa and for all of us. The project, by extension, for all of us. This is halal, this is haram. Don't come near here, come near here. You have certain limits that you are free within. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. These are the limits of Allah. Sharia. Do not go beyond that. Don't transgress those limits. Stay within whatever is halal. Within that, you're free to do anything. You are absolutely free. But don't cross those limits. So shaitan persuaded Adam and Hawa to eat from that tree. Allah forgave them. And then just about for Adam to assume his role, responsibility on earth as a Khalifa, he gave him, this is the beauty about this whole thing. If we can only understand, I'll end with that, inshallah. He gave them an instruction. He said, فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُمْ مِنْ قُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا مِنْهَا جَمِيعًا. We said, descend all of you from this place of training. You and your wife and shaitan, all of you get out. Now they are in the, outside of that garden. But Allah told Adam, and by extension, the progeny of Adam, everyone. فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُمْ مِنِّي هُدًى فَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. I will send you, O Adam, guidance from me. You will receive my guidance from time to time. Now, whoever adheres and follows my guidance will never be in a state of fear or anxiety. فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Wow, subhanallah. So now I know how to protect myself. All I have to do is follow the divine guidance. That's it. Allah promised that you will never be in that state of fear or anxiety. You will never be depressed in your life, regardless of your socioeconomic condition. Regardless, poor, rich, medium, it doesn't matter. You will always be contented, happy, peaceful, and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this ni'mah that He had blessed you with. And that is His guidance, the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, I'll take you, this from Surah Al-Baqarah. Now, I want to take you to Surah Al-Taha. You know, the story of Adam appears in the Quran in 7 places. And in every place, there's some addition to it. You have to bring in all the stories together to get the whole picture. So in Surah Taha, same command, same instruction. فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُمْ مِنِّي هُدًى. Whenever guidance comes to you from me, فَمَنِ اتَّبَعَ هُدَايَ. Whoever follows my guidance, فَلَا يَضِلُّ وَلَا يَشْقَى. Whoever follows my guidance will never يَضِلُّ, get lost. وَلَا يَشْقَى, will never be miserable. Now take the ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Taha. If you adhere to the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will never be in a state of fear or anxiety. You will never lose the path that is taking you back to Allah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And you will never be miserable in your life. وَلَا يَشْقَى. وَلَا يَشْقَى. But now comes the punchline. Okay, how about those who don't want to adhere to the divine guidance, right? It's their choice. Allah gave them a choice. What does Allah say? وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي, whoever turns away from my remembrance, my guidance, فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا, will have a very miserable life in this world. Allah promised. He says, you stray away from my path, you follow other guidance, you don't want to follow my guidance, then it's okay, it's up to you. But I'm promising you, you'll have a very miserable life. This is the state we are in today. This is the state we are in today. We are not looking at the spiritual healing. شِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. Allah said, there's a healing in the Quran for your hearts, for your minds, for your souls. All we have to do is just open the Quran and begin reading. Wallahi, it's so powerful. You know, with my son, when he has episodes, we read to him, how you feel now? Oh, I feel so much better. I feel great. Of course, you have to feel good. This is Kalamullah, you know. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised that if you don't follow the guidance, you will have a very rough time in this world. Not only that, on the day of judgment will be assembled blind. وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. They will be raised blind. And they will complain, oh Allah, how come you raised me blind? وَقَدْ كُنْتُ بَصِيرًا. I used to see in this world. How come I'm blind? Allah will answer so profoundly. He says, كَذَلِكَ أَتَتْكَ آيَاتُنَا فَنَسِيتَهَا وَكَذَلِكَ الْيَوْمَ تُنْسَى. Get out of here. In this way, it's all the same. Our guidance come to you and you ignored it. And today we ignore you too. Subhanallah. Not only we will have miserable life here, we will be ignored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. So my dear brothers and sisters, we do have the spiritual. Now, don't get me wrong, and the sister and the doctor here will tell you, there could be some cases where they need medication. So don't rule that out. The Prophet said, for every ailment Allah created, He created a medicine for it. So if it is biological, if it has to do with the brain, if it has to do with the neurons or whatever the case may be, seek medical help, no doubt. But please understand the importance of the spiritual side of the healing. We have to be spiritual. We have to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because Huwa ash-Shafi, He is the healer. He is the one in control. It is He who leaves, it is He who heals and inshallah leaves no trace of illness, as the dua we are taught by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma rabban nas adhhib al-ba's washfi anta shafi la shifa illa shifa'uk shifa la yughadiru saqama. It is He who will permit the physical, whatever ailments we have to be cured, and it is He who will heal us emotionally and also mentally, psychologically, among other things. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم. Thank you so much for coming, but I do want to take the sister. You had your hand up there. I can't hear.
Dr. Naeem? Dr.
Naeem. Halim Naeem. Dr. Naeem. You can answer. Someone what?
So, question was basically, with trauma and things like that. What if somebody, and Imam really actually just said it right now, actually, but what if somebody is doing all they can? They're reading, they're praying, they're doing all this stuff, and you still have a mental illness, right? Are there hot?
You have to put it on.
But that is a mental trauma. Is a mental. But are you? What are you saying? It sounds like you're asking if somebody's struggling with something, however it is. It sounded like what you were saying was a mental illness. But if you're struggling with something, but you're still religious, you're still reading and doing all the rituals Islamically, then how do you address that? Because you're still doing all the things for spiritual. Is that what you're asking, or no? Be clear, what are you asking? Yep. Okay. 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 That's fine. Yeah. I'll get to the question. Don't worry. I'm just listening right now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. It sounds like there's a few layers to what you're asking, okay, because I'm hearing it come from a few different directions, so maybe streamlining it a little more. But so I can, talk to you afterwards. But the initial gist of what to summarize some of this is basically if you've had a lot of bad things happen to you and you're still religious, and this was a point I really I really was happy that Imam said there are a number of people very, very, religious, doing the right thing, everything like that. There's people who are hufad, who are depressed. There's people who are doing a lot of different things in Islam, praying, that are depressed. There's these things are actually scientific. You're not gonna. There's people who pray all the time and have diabetes. You don't talk about their iman, right? People who have hypertension, high blood pressure, aneurysms, cancer. There's no problem there. I can show you parts of the brain when trauma happens in the limbic system where certain things are inflamed, where certain things are off balance. It's a scientific thing. Any neurologist, I don't know if you have any in this community, but a neurologist will show you scientifically, yeah, that's where it is. That's what's going on. So this is not an indication of faith or anything like that. I get there may be some other layers to what you're asking and can talk about that, but I wanted to be clear, coming from this thing, that you can do as much as you can possibly do spiritually, but there also is a biological component to your to what is going on with you, and that should not be stigmatized. You should not be telling people that your belief is wrong or you don't have enough iman because you got diabetes. Okay, maybe your iman is low around donuts. Okay, but nobody's gonna say that, and you shouldn't. It's a medical, scientific thing, and so is depression, and so is bipolar, and so is schizophrenia, and so is trauma, the traumatized brain, PTSD. These are scientific things that are beyond arguing about, and so looking at that, it can be biological, and it can be something that has to be also addressed medically, which Imam already said. So I don't want you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please stick around for refreshments afterwards. Thank you, Dr. Halim. Thank you, Sister Kamilah. May Allah bless you. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Just some housekeeping real quick, sisters. The sisters will eat first after Maghrib. So brothers stay on this side. The sisters will have access to have pizza first, and then when we're done, we'll